Without further ado, I'd like to introduce the next presenter, Miss Nesbitt-Jerman.
There we are. This is Julia. She was 2 months old when I first met her, but now I don't know if she's alive or dead. She had been just a few days old when they brought her into the orphanage in Uganda. Her mother had been 13 and had died during childbirth. Her father, who was 15, left her on the hospital steps. She was then taken to the orphanage, where there were 45 babies to 2 caregivers. In this picture, she weighs about 4 pounds, so you can see she's very unhealthy. The thing is, she should have been healthy. I mean, she was fed, clothed, and bathed every day, along with the other 44 babies. The problem was she wasn't being held. She wasn't being touched or played with or cradled at all. With 45 babies to 2 adults, there wasn't time to take her out of her crib, so she just stayed there staring at the ceiling all day. She was dying because she was given no love, and without it, she had nothing to live for. And with that happy start, hi, my name's Allegra, and I'm here to talk to you guys about attachment and my experience with it in a Ghanaian orphanage. I first got interested in my topic when I was in Uganda. That's where I first met Julia while I was working in an orphanage there. I chose this topic because I wanted to look at how kids develop in a positive way in orphanages, which led me to a specific part of childhood called attachment. Attachment is the feeling of either security or insecurity towards relationships and towards yourself. It's based off of relationships with your caregiver growing up. Different types of attachment depend on whether you have a positive or negative view of yourself and a positive or negative view of others. I'm going to use examples from popular television shows and movies to demonstrate these types of attachment. An example of secure attachment is Jack Dawson from Titanic. He knows that he's worthwhile and worthy of being loved, while still trusting other people to love him. Therefore, he has a positive view of himself and a positive view of others. An example of preoccupied attachment is the dean from Community. Although he trusts that other people are capable of giving love, he doesn't think he is worthy of their love. So he is constantly living in fear that that love will be taken away. Therefore, he has a negative view of himself and a positive view of others. Preoccupied people will often put up with really bad relationships because they don't think they deserve anything else. An example of dismissive attachment is Barney Stinson from How I Met Your Mother. He knows that he's worthy of someone else's love, but he doesn't actually trust others to love him. Therefore, he has a positive view of himself and a negative view of others. He has trouble committing to relationships, and if he's in one, he won't trust his partner. An example of fearful attachment is Alison Reynolds from The Breakfast Club. She doesn't think she's worthy of anyone's love, and at the same time does not trust anyone to love her. Therefore, she has a negative view of herself and a negative view of others. People with fearful attachment have really low self-esteem. They desire closeness, but they avoid intimacy because they fear rejection. Out of all these attachments, the first one is a secure attachment, and the other 3 are insecure attachments. These attachments develop before the age of 2. I also looked at attachment in different cultures. So generally, certain cultures are going to raise their children differently. So obviously, Vancouver is going to be very different from Ghana. This matters in my project because the caregivers in an orphanage will raise the orphans depending on what habits they learned while they're growing up in their culture. Please note that this is a generalization of each culture, and it is no way intended to target individuals of a certain culture or country. I had the opportunity to interview Mary Lamarck from Sunrise Adoption Agencies. Lamarck has traveled all over the world visiting various orphanages, and she was able to tell me about her experience in China and Eastern Europe. She told me that in her experience in a Chinese orphanage where the babies go untouched, They stay in their crib all day. Their bottles are often propped up in their cribs so that they can feed themselves. They have almost no social contact, no one touching them, no one holding them, no one talking to them. So without any social contact, they'll grow up not knowing what it's like to be loved and not knowing how to love. I also had the opportunity to interview my advisor, Andrea Baston, and she recounted a very different story from Ghana. She told me that in Ghana, the babies are hardly ever left alone. They're always being held and carried around. She also mentioned a very specific Ghanaian style of carrying the baby, which puts the baby heartbeat to heartbeat with the mother. This way, the baby is experiencing the world from the mother's side. So while they're seeing all these new, different, new and scary things in the world, they still feel safe because they're right beside the mother. This contact and stimulation harbors secure attachment, as does being so close to the mother all the time. So in an orphanage, even if the biological mother is not present at the orphanage, the babies are still carried around like this by their caregivers, so they're still getting the same experience and the same feeling of safety. In my research, I also found that in Germany, parents generally respond differently to their baby's needs. So one way the trust develops is that if the baby has a need, the baby will cry, and if that need is met by the caregiver, trust develops. In Germany, the studies were showing that it had become an ideal in their culture for kids to be very independent and not ask too much from their parents. So to promote this independence, when the baby cried, their parents were not responding to their cries so that the baby would cry itself out and learn not to rely too heavily on their parents. What this actually resulted in is that the babies were learning they weren't worth anyone's time. They learned not to let anyone get too close and that they couldn't actually trust anyone. So receiving those messages is what leads to dismissive attachment. In Japan, the opposite was happening. In traditional families, the child spent almost every minute of their life beside their mother. In many cases, the child even slept in the same bed as their mother up until elementary school, so they were spending 100% of their time with the mother. Spending so much time with their mother didn't give them any opportunity to explore the world on their own initiative. So this resulted in them being too dependent on their mothers and not trusting themselves. These babies were classified as preoccupied. In regards to all these different countries, we can see that cultural value can have a big effect on attachment. So I was looking specifically at attachment in orphanages, and to tell you the truth, I didn't really think it was possible to have secure attachment in an orphanage. So I decided to do some research and find out what other people thought. There is a UN initiative called the Care Reform Initiative. This initiative includes a set of guidelines for orphanages to follow so that the children are raised in the best possible way. I'll brush over a few of these guidelines relating to attachment. The guidelines require that there are people called key workers who work with the kids. These people are assigned to certain kids and expected to do weekly or daily check-ins. They are also expected to be educated professionals for the job. The guidelines want one worker assigned to about 3 children. And to put that into perspective, in Uganda, when I was there were 45 babies to 2 women. And just to clarify, some kids at these orphanages are not true orphans. They may have one or even both parents, but their families just can't support them. If this is the case, the guidelines require that the orphanage meets the family and actually talks to them. If the reason the child is being sent to the orphanage is because the family can't afford to keep them, then the guidelines require that the home provide financial support for either the family or even sometimes the village. This is in order to preserve the family bonds. If the child must be sent to the orphanage, all possible measures must be taken to keep in contact with the family. The home must also provide the children with religious and language support if that's part of the background that the child is coming from. So these guidelines would be great in an ideal world, but they're also very unrealistic. In an orphanage, there are many things to worry about, like financials, food, medicine, legalities. I've just explained 3 guidelines, and in all, there are about 525 to go by. So, after all my research, obviously I wanted to see for myself, so I went to Ghana. So I have a little video here. Join me here. This is a video of a morning prayer session at the Royal Seed Home. So this is their version of morning stretch, pretty much. There you go. Okay. For those of you who don't know, this is the Royal Seed Home, an orphanage in Ghana. Our school has been connected with the Royal Seed Home for about 8 years now, throughout which we've raised various funds to support them. I'm so happy to say that every single penny that has ever been donated there has gone straight to the kids. Our school has also had a pen pal program with this orphanage. I'm here with 4 pen pals. There's Joyce, Eunice, Millicent, Faith, and the founder of the home and the mother, Naomi, behind us. Raise your hand. Have you guys ever received a letter or written one? Yeah, I have, actually. So yeah, those are your pen pals. Here they are holding the pencils we donated to them. They were so excited to receive our gifts, and I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who donated school supplies. When I was there, I was expecting to be a really good use. I was expecting to be put to work, changing diapers, helping clean and cook, and teaching English to the kids. But actually, they didn't need my help with any of that. I mean, they could handle all of that. What they needed was money. What makes the Royal Seed Home different from other organizations is that it's run by a local, Naomi, who is actually looking to better these kids' lives. She wants to create a permanent and self-sustainable organization for them. However, in this stage of the growth, they need us. They've managed to buy a piece of land where they are growing their own food and collecting their own rainwater. They plan to build solar panels and have already started building housing there for the kids. I'm going to do a shameless ask here. If every person in this room donated $20, they could put a roof on one of their buildings. And if everyone donated $30, they could plant another set of crops, and it would really mean a lot to them and to me if you guys could help with that. Every dollar raised today will go directly towards a sustainable future for the Royal Seed Home. If you feel moved to do so, my mom will be standing in the foyer at the break to collect any donations. Thanks. So, to tell the truth, I was skeptical of seeing these Care Reform Initiative guidelines at the Royal Seed Home. The problem is that meeting these guidelines requires a lot of money, and in the real world, most homes don't have that kind of financial support. So, I wasn't expecting much, but I was actually pleasantly surprised. The Royal Seed Home met the expectations of the Care Reform Initiative, just not in the way I expected. They're always trying to keep the family bonds intact, and they've got all the proper facilities. And certain staff work with certain age groups consistently so that it's the same constant adult-child relationships that the guidelines was hoping with the key worker idea. And also, another cool thing, instead of staying in the nursery during the school week, the babies are actually brought into the classrooms and the teachers carry them around while they teach. So, can you imagine that? Like, your teacher not only carrying around a baby, but carrying around someone else's baby while they're trying to teach their class? It's a very different style. So, it's great for the babies because this means that they're consistently spending time with one person and are exposed to all these social situations and all these noises and sights and sounds that will actually help their brain develop. So the Care Reform Initiative is based in really good intentions. In an ideal situation, it would be great to have that sort of structure and be able to meet all the expectations. But in the real world, it's extremely expensive and not very realistic. One problem is that there are too many kids. This is a picture of Naomi surrounded by all the kids in the orphanage. The official number of kids in the Royal Seed Home is 75 because the guidelines say that the maximum amount is 75. But the real number is 150. The thing is, kids are only supposed to stay for 3 months. This is all about preserving bonds with the family. But in reality, some kids arrive when they're babies and leave when they're 18 or maybe later. The reason these kids would go to the orphanage is because they're not supported in their homes. The government had really been pushing Naomi to send some of her kids back to their villages, so finally Naomi said okay, and she tried sending one girl back to the girls' village. The girl had arrived at the Royal Seed Home when she was 8 and had spent 3 years there. This was 3 years of Naomi had raised her for, so obviously it was really hard for Naomi to give her up. When she left, the girl was 11. After she was sent away, she was raped by her uncle and became pregnant. She died during childbirth just after turning 12. This really broke Naomi's heart, and she vowed never to send another child away. So she was holding up these guidelines, but it ended in tragedy. The care reform initiative makes sense on paper, but sometimes the guidelines don't work out the way they're intended to. And the bottom line is they didn't end up benefiting the girl. So I'm now going to tell you all some stories about the children at Royal Seed Home. The following stories are my opinions based on observations at the Royal Seed Home and my knowledge of attachment. This little girl's name is Miriam. Miriam was very insecurely attached. She stuck right beside me throughout my stay there, right from the start. But that was the problem. She would trust anyone, even me, a complete stranger, immediately. She was preoccupied. She didn't think she was worthy of anyone's love, so she was constantly putting her trust in others to give her love, while she was always living in fear that it would be taken away. Can I? There we go. In this video, she's in the green dress with the white collar, and she just does not want to leave us. Other people make her feel loved, but the problem is that she doesn't take that sense of worthiness with her when she leaves. She relies on other people to make her feel worthwhile. And so she's still a wonderful, happy, babbling little kid, but because of this preoccupied attachment, it's likely she'll grow up without any sense of self-worth. This is Nanana. I love that name. She is an example of fearful attachment. She didn't trust others to keep her safe, but she also couldn't soothe herself. So by this we can infer that she's developing a negative self-image. She is distressed really easily, but she can't actually be consoled by her caregivers. They would play this game with me where they would put her right near to me because she was freaked out because I was a stranger, and she would start bawling and wailing and crying her eyes out, and then they would take her away, and she would start crying really quietly and sort of like go into herself, and they would put her near me, and she would start crying, freaking out, and they would take her away, and she'd start whimpering, and so they thought it was hilarious that she was so scared of me. I didn't, but that shows that while she's scared of me because I'm a stranger, at the same time, she can't be comforted by her caregivers. So this demonstrates her fearful attachment. This little boy's name is Christian. He is an example of secure attachment. When we first arrived at the home, he would bawl his eyes out whenever we held him. For the first times that we held him. But whenever Cynthia, who was his caregiver, took him back, he calmed down immediately. Slowly, he got used to us and then was okay with being held. This is a perfect example of secure attachment. He leaves the safe zone of his caregiver, Cynthia, and goes to a complete stranger, so he starts crying and gets really distressed. But as soon as she takes him back, he calms down. And after that, he was okay with exploring us a bit as long as Cynthia was there. And later, he had no problem with being with us. After we were okayed by Cynthia, he was happy to play with us, and this kind of behavior exemplifies secure attachment. I mentioned Jolia at the beginning of my project. She was the orphan from Uganda. She was dying from a lack of love, and because she had no possible opportunity to create attachment. Meanwhile, Christian was thriving. Unlike Jolia, Christian was always being held. He was pretty much never left alone. He would waddle around the compound and be followed, picked up, tossed around, played with along with the other kids. He had a particular big brother, actually, who would come every morning before school and walk around the compound with him. He was even comfortable exploring himself. So Jolia had been missing all of this. Christian has it, and he will grow up to be an amazing, smiling, healthy child because of it. And that's all thanks to the people who loved and cared for him. To end my presentation, I'd like to say a few thank yous. First off, thank you to my grandma who flew out here all the way from Toronto to come see this. And thank you to Birch, my brother, for taking some of the pressure off and, although distracting me a lot of the time, always making me laugh. I want to say a big thank you to my advisors. You guys have helped me out so much over the course of this project, whether it be with moral support or professional advice. I really enjoyed sharing our stories and talking during our meetings. Thank you so much for being just as excited about this topic as I was, and am, obviously. And I want to give a huge thank you to my parents. You guys have always supported me and given me amazing experiences. I'm so grateful to have all the incredible opportunities I do, and it's all thanks to you guys. And finally, thank you guys for coming. I really hope you enjoyed yourselves.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Island Pacific School, I'm very pleased to announce that Miss Allegra Nesbitt-Jerman has now completed all the requirements of her Masterworks.